How you doing, Southern Alberta? This is the Stormbringer bringing you the PZW Match of the Week. Brandon Van Danielson versus Superfly Dan. Tom, I know yourself and the audience is familiar with Superfly Dan, but this is probably the first time many of you have seen Brandon Van Danielson in action. A phenomenally intriguing performer, Van Danielson. Van Danielson has kind of been with PZW on and off for the last year to year and a half. He's filled in a couple empty slots. He's worked a couple shows up in Brooks. He's worked a show in Medicine Hat, but he hasn't had consistent bookings with the company. Basically what happened is Superfly Dan's scheduled opponent, who was coming up from the United States, ran into problems at the border, and Van Danielson was contacted to fill in. What happened next was unbelievable, Tom. Van Danielson told us off. Van Danielson told those of us at Power Zone Wrestling basically where to shove it. He had no intention of taking the matchup until he knew for sure he was going to wrestle Superfly Dan. Knowing Superfly Dan is in the top 6 rankings and is poised for some heavyweight championship matches coming up in the near future, Van Danielson took the match and proudly proclaimed he was going to make history, knock out Superfly Dan, and in one match rise upon the ranks into the top 6 of Power Zone Wrestling. So here we are, Brandon Van Danielson versus Superfly Dan. Van Danielson heavily influenced by the Dynamite Kid. Dynamite Kid, one of his favorite wrestlers of all time. Van Danielson is using DK's arsenal to the best of his ability. You can see Superfly Dan is the larger man, the larger athlete, but you are not larger when you are laid out on your back, getting your butt kicked, Tom. Goodness knows I know a thing or two about that. Van Danielson with the Irish whip. Beautiful backdrop on Superfly Dan. Absolutely decimating the back of Superfly. Goes to the pin. You can see Van Danielson employing very simple and basic strategy in laying out the pin attempt. He takes his elbow and grinds it right into the jaw of Superfly Dan. So not only is Superfly Dan being forced to kick out and remove the body weight of Van Danielson, but now he's got to deal with the pain of having another man's forearm and elbow rubbed right into his face. And you see a mistake by Van Danielson. Van Danielson goes out of the ring, engages the audience, and here's Superfly Dan with the small package. Ref Julian there for the pin. Van Danielson takes it back over. You can see the rookie mistake out of Van Danielson. Superfly Dan nearly capitalized on it, nearly pulled the victory right out of his hat. An incredible matchup out of two unbelievable athletes within Power Zone Wrestling. Van Danielson perched up in the penthouse, waiting on Superfly Dan. You can see Superfly obviously has had his bell rung. And now, no, the scoop. Superfly scooped him. Van Danielson down in sort of a modified powerbomb. Superfly Dan obviously is hurt, trying to get together his marbles. Can he get over and take advantage of the powerbomb? The mistake by Van Danielson. Superfly now trying to get himself up. Van Danielson looks to be the first to regain his feet. Van Danielson making his way up. Superfly now making his way up. Superfly doing everything he can to get the audience behind him, trying to get the audience involved, trying to get the audience to help him muster that last bit of breath that it may take to put out Van Danielson. Look at that unbelievable spin kick by Superfly. The Irish whip. Van Danielson sent for the ride, the leapfrog, and look at again, unbelievable athleticism out of Superfly Dan. The pin, 3 count, here it is. No, the kick out by Van Danielson. Unbelievable heart and passion out of both these men. The Irish whip, the reverse, the double reverse, sets him up. Look at this back suplex. Unbelievable wrestling. I have said it before, and I will say it again, Tom. Pound for pound, Superfly Dan is the #1 wrestler in Power Zone Wrestling. And I mean that in quotation marks, wrestler. An absolutely incredible performer. You saw that unbelievable drop kick right to the prone head of Van Danielson. Superfly Dan in firm control. Sets him up, rolls through with a reversal of the suplex. I've never seen that before, Tom. Have you? Unbelievable maneuver out of Superfly Dan. The pin again. And Van Danielson is right at the rope. Van Danielson is able to save the match by getting his foot on the rope. Unbelievable ring awareness out of Van Danielson. Superfly Dan, the more experienced performer, but Van Danielson showing that he was well aware of where he was in the ring. Look at that forearm by Van Danielson. The Irish whip himself lays him in. No, Superfly Dan with the reverse. The pile driver. No, the reversal by Van Danielson. The tombstone pile driver. That is it. Superfly Dan is down. There is no conceivable way he is going to get up from that. It is elementary from here, Tom. Go for the pin, Van Danielson. This is a mistake. A brutal, brutal error by the younger Van Danielson. You hit him with a pile driver. How many championships has The Undertaker won with a tombstone pile driver? You nailed him, Van Danielson. This is a mistake. Just go for the pin. You can see Superfly Dan trying to regain his feet. He cannot get himself up. Obviously, this man will have suffered at least a concussion off of a maneuver like that. Superfly down. This is a mistake, Tom. This is painful to watch. Van Danielson waiting on him, nails the drop kick. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Van Danielson is in firm control, Tom. Maybe I am wrong. Maybe this truly is Brandon Van Danielson's night to conquer Superfly Dan. Van Danielson trying to make a statement, trying to show Commissioner Jim Dandy he belongs in Power Zone Wrestling. No, the crucifix, the roll through by Van Danielson. I have never seen wrestling this good within Power Zone Wrestling. Then the sunset flip and the pin. Unbelievable matchup. Tom, November the 7th, the LCCDA Electric Barn. Myself, I'm back in the ring. Our version of the Royal Rumble, November 7th.